Welcome everyone to the Flux Dev Meeting.
Hey, friends. This what? Thursday, April 16th. There's a US time slot. Um, we have some agenda items. One is that DP's wanted to discuss the this is the server-side apply um ignore rules, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Who else has agenda items that they wanted to discuss?
Is Adrian here? Yes.
Yeah, hello.
Adrian, you want to discuss a little bit what's happening with the Kubernetes upstream events?
Yeah, yeah, we can talk about it.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, let's add that to the agenda. Adrian, do you have the issue from upstream, so your pull request, so we can write it down in the doc? If you have it, can you paste it in the chat
Yeah,
here?
sure. There you go.
Thanks.
Oh, I'm taking notes in the complete wrong place. I feel silly for a moment here. I'll have to reset that.
Yeah, and for me, I want to discuss a little bit, and also Mateus should say something about it, where we are with the Helm fork and all the fixes that we try to get into Helm, and we can also talk a little bit what will get into the next patch version of Flux that will hopefully come, if not this week, Monday.
Okay. Cool. We'll share the notes tab. This. I guess our first dip is here.
Yes.
So
Okay, let's start. Dipti, can you
Mhm.
give us an overview of what we have so far and
Yeah. So this,
discuss?
yeah. So as we all know, I think so. This was the capability to specify drift ignore rules in like a customization and have that applied to the resources when we do like a apply. Um, so there were two aspects to it. One was the dry run and one the actual apply. I think Lee had also asked a couple of weeks ago regarding are we applying it during the dry run as well? So the first part here just talks about why we don't strip anything for when we are actually doing the dry run. This is primarily because if the user is like unintentionally or like intentionally also like ignoring any mandatory fields, or just if there are any errors in the spec after the drift ignore rules are applied, if we strip it in the dry run object, then it can lead to failures and validation failures, which will then fail every reconcile. So we don't want to apply any ignore rules during the dry run. We only want to do it after the dry run has returned the object and on the actual payload that the server-side apply will be executing on. Are we all in agreement with that part?
So let's explain a little bit the procedure here. The first thing we do, we read the file from the customized build output. We split the customized build output, we get all the unique objects, then we apply a static sort on them. For example, namespace first, and then I don't know, config map, which is the namespace and so on, right? So we have this kind of ordering. Then we take every object by its order, and then the first thing we do is not dry run. The first thing we do is we try to query the cluster for that particular object. And that's the thing that tells us we are going to patch the object or we are going to create the object, right? Of course, if it returns 404 not found, we are not going to do any ignore rules, nothing like that. Everything is skipped. We go directly to the dry run to make sure the object is valid according to the Open API spec. And another thing that is very important here at dry run, when we do the dry run, there can be mutation webhooks that are adding or changing the fields, right? And how we made Flux originally, and this is how we should be keeping it forever. You don't have to do ignore rules for mutation webhooks. If a webhook mutates an object, Flux inherits that mutation as the desired state. So if you have Kyverno, VAP, whatever is in there, this is out of scope of ignore rules. You don't have to write ignore rules for that because that's your actual desired state. And that's why we survived so long without having ignore rules, because almost 90 something percent of the mutation happens at admission, and Flux has no conflict with those. Now, there is the case where these mutations happen after the dry run, after the apply. One good example is horizontal pod autoscaler. Another example is vertical pod autoscaler. Another example is set manager, which mutates on CRDs and other objects the CA bundle. It generates a new CA bundle, which is valid, and adds it there. For this type of cases, we need these kind of ignore rules. So whatever happens in the cluster, we shouldn't override the cert with a nil cert and everything will fail, and we don't want to scale back the deployments and so on. So after we determine that the object exists, now we have a different type of logic with ignore fields. So after we determine the object exists, normally we go straight to dry run and validate the changes which are in the desired state. And Deepti, you are saying here, we don't remove things that are supposed to ignore. We do the dry run as it is.
Right.
Now, of course, if, let's say, we have replicas set in the deployment, we forgot to remove it. Like replicas, it's easy to deal with because you can remove it. But let's say we don't remove it and we talk about this use case which everybody understands. You still have replicas in the desired state. Replicas is set to 2. Horizontal pod autoscaler moved it to 8. If we don't apply the ignore rule, dry run in this case will tell us there is a drift between the desired state and the actual state. Now, but we ensure that validation is correct with everything that we have in the desired state, even if we override the field. Then, from what I understand from your current code, is if we get the drift, we don't look at what's drifted at all. We don't analyze the drift. What we do is we follow the current code path, which is drift detected, we have to apply. But now, when we have to apply, and apply in Flux terms means we construct a patch that we send to the cluster, and the cluster has its own server-side apply logic to transfer that patch and apply it in etcd. And here we apply the ignore rules on top of the patch, and we remove the fields. Replicas, for example, will be removed. Now, the problem that's immediate here is, what if only replicas are changing and nothing else? We are going to do a API call, an apply, which is probably the most expensive operation we can do with etcd, because dry run, it's it's less expensive. Apply is the one that's actually expensive. We are going to do this, and then the response will be of the apply. It will be no op, but can we determine it's a no op? I don't think we can, right? So we are going to say always configure, right? And we are going to spam the Flux alerting, correct?
Mhm.
Dipti?
Yep. Yeah. So that was the 5. So, Lee, if you come down, I think, yeah. This scenario, right, where the only thing that has changed is the ignore field, and then on every reconcile, the dry run apply detects that ignored field has drifted, and then we end up returning in configured action. But from an SSA perspective, it's actually a no op. So we could, yeah, possibly modify it and have like a has drifted with ignored rules version where we after the dry run, whatever object we get, the dry run object, we'll apply the drift ignore rules to that object as well, and the object that we were going to apply using SSA apply. And if nothing has changed there, then we go ahead and return unchanged action so that we don't unnecessarily do a round trip to the API server to do that no op SSA apply.
And how can we determine that, Dipti? Like, so we do the dry run, okay, the object is valid, but there is drift.
Yeah, so
Then we say,
then we like go ahead and just like we're applying the ignore rules, compiling the rules and applying it to the object we were going to apply, we also apply it to this dry run object output. We strip the fields in both of them so that it only has the payload that has stripped all the fields that are being ignored. And then when we do the comparison in the has drift, it will only compare fields that don't have drift ignore rules specified on them. And so that will show us that,
So we determine drift on ourselves based on the objects returned after the dry run.
yeah, so we also strip that object along with the object that we were going to apply. So we strip both of them and then we do the compare on those two objects. And so if it was only a drift ignored rule, which we were anyways going to strip in our next payload, then we don't take that into consideration in the has drifted.
Are
yeah,
we
so
doing
we,
this today? Like,
No, we
yeah,
don't
of
do this
course,
today. We do has drifted
we,
is there, has drifted is there, but
yeah,
we don't strip anything. So that's why there is a
yeah.
mismatch because dry run object will always show us the drift in this ignored field on every reconcile. But then when we apply the first time, it will correctly like remove Flux's ownership. In subsequent apply, also it will try to do the same, but nothing has changed from like the Kubernetes API server perspective.
We have a function called has object drifted, where we do a semantic deep equal of the both
Okay.
both objects,
Mhm.
and semantic deep equal on the left side it allows more things, right? And it only catches the differences from the other side. And ideally, if here in has object drifted, before we do semantic deep equal, we have this prepare staging. So we do prepare object for diff of the existing object, and then we do prepare object for diff of the dry run object. In the prepare functions, here is where we can apply the ignore rules and remove the paths from both of them. Then deep equal, if only those change, deep equal should say equal.
Right. Yeah.
And then then definitely we can say unchange action. I'm not going to do any API calls, skip this object, go to the next one, and so on. So I think we should definitely try to do this and have some extensive testing around it. Like, of course, the happy path. We only change what's ignored. Then we test this function, and this function should return false. Then we combine things. We added fields, removed fields, right? Because we also have to basically there are like three tests that we have to do here to ensure at least three. One is ignore combine with change in another field. Ignore combine with a field added, so no changes to existing field, but a new field.
New field
And third, fields removed,
moved.
which are very, very important because we want to remove, if you remove something, I don't know, something from Git, we can't skip it. We need to do it and remove it, right? So I think we have to have at least 4 test cases here. Only changes in ignore fields, and then ignore fields combined with all these other 3 mutated field, added field, deleted field. And we
We can
kind
do
of have these
this.
kind of tests, right? We can reuse the tests and add this other dimension on top of it with the ignore ones.
Yeah.
What you said, Mateus?
We should have those tests for fields that are outside ignore rules and also inside. So multiply that number you said by 2, and
Yeah.
the fields should also have defaults versus without defaults as well.
Yeah,
Just
so I
what
think something
happens.
like spec.replicas versus one of the other fields where it doesn't default, yeah. Plus all combinations of, yeah, no, makes sense. So I think making sure the ignored fields drift, that those set of cases, plus something that is not ignored, either there's no change to it, something is added, something is removed, or something is modified. All combinations of that
Yeah.
make sense. Mhm.
Yeah, and I think if we can prove this works, I think we'll get into a state where we can actually accept this change, because as it is today, any ignore rules that you have will result in a huge spam of events, and no one will want that, right? I mean, it's
Right.
kind of, you ignore it to not to not have to deal with this kind of drift, and then okay, we are ignoring the drift in the cluster, but we are going to send you like we changed the object all the time, and that will confuse everybody. So we like, in this current state, we can't actually
Yeah, it's not just
uh,
noise, it's a wrong message, right?
yeah, it's confusion.
Yeah.
Like people will say, like,
Yeah.
what the hell am I being ignored? And now Flux is telling me the thing has actually changed. Like it shouldn't, right? So it's like we definitely can't do it without implementing number 5 here.
Sounds good.
Um,
So let me just get this straight. The ultimate goal of this feature is to be able to define a desired state field with GitOps, have Flux create the field, and then if the object or the resource it already exists, then we never update or remove the field in the cluster. Or
I think
yes.
what you're talking about has a connection with item 6, which I think is an important thing we need to improve as well.
drift ignore rules are applied even if the drift ignored rule has not changed. In the current version, if a field not specified in the drift ignore rules drifts without any drift to the fields specified in them, the drift is corrected in the apply. While correcting the drift ignore rules are applied as well. This can have unintended consequences where the user has specified the fields as to be ignored, but a field manager has not yet taken ownership of the field. A possible improvement could be if the drift ignored rule has not drifted. Do not apply. So, like, Flux will manage it as long
Until another manager starts
until another
managing.
manager?
Yeah,
Why?
because otherwise, according to SSA, the Kubernetes API will remove the field,
Mhm.
right? If a field has no manager, what that translates in, we want to delete the field. So it translates into a delete operation, which we cannot afford to happen ever, right? I think we actually need to define this very well in our documentation, where ignore only applies when someone else takes management of that particular field.
So it's not actually about ignoring, it's about transferring ownership.
It's
Somebody
ignoring
else taking,
drift.
yeah. Yeah, but like somebody else has taken ownership. That's how we are making sure that Kubernetes API server is not, deleting or defaulting to like the default value. Somebody else takes ownership and then we drop our ownership. So that's how we are implementing the ignore.
And then we want
And
to,
then we get to a deadlock where if you ignore a required field, let's say CA bundle, that's the best example, right? You can't create a custom resource with a conversion webhook. Kubernetes will not allow you to do that if you don't specify the CA bundle, right? So what everybody is doing is specifying CA bundle in the CRD with a nil base 64 encoding.
yeah.
It's not a certificate there, that will always fail
Mhm.
on the actual webhook call,
Apply.
Yeah.
right? No, the apply will work. That's the tricky part.
Okay. Okay. And when it's exercised, the code for that time it will open.
Yeah. So what people are doing, they are putting the CRD here with this dummy cert that will never work for real, but is there to pass the validation. So Flux will be able, or kubectl or Helm or whatever you are using, they will be able to create the CRD in the cluster. And the CRD is annotated with a cert manager annotation. The moment the CRD is applied, is created, then it's immediately mutated by cert manager, which sets up the right certificate in the bundle. Now, without having this ignore rule, what Flux does at the next cycle, it will detect drift between the desired state, the dummy cert, and the actual cert in the cluster, overrides the cert, and everything fails from that moment on. And we have implemented like this hack right now in Flux because all CRDs have this kind of stuff. What we do, we actually check the certificate is valid, and if it's not valid, we ignore it. So we actually have this kind of, I've implemented this, I don't know, long time ago.
Last year.
Last year, yeah. Where we treat this field as being very special. But of course, this is not the way forward. We can't do this for everything, especially with vertical autoscaler and so on. We are not, how can you determine if the replicas are dummy or not? There is no such concept, right? With certificates, it's easy because you look into the certificate and the certificate is empty. It's just a base 64 encoding of null or something like that. I forgot what's in there. But ideally, what we want to do is we create the object. If it passes dry run, then if someone acts on a field that's in our ignore rule, we don't touch it in the life cycle of that object. The major problem is what happens if the thing that manages now the other controller or whatever it is, CLI, whatever it is, that manages this other field, what happens? And the field is required, like CA bundle. What happens if they remove themselves as the owner? Normally, if they remove themselves as the owner, Kube API should deny that operation because the field is required. So
That is the
we
case.
should be,
Yeah, I
right?
have a test also that adds that
And if
verifies
it
that
has a
once for a
default,
mandate. Yeah.
and if it
Default
has
is
a
okay.
default, it will default, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but for a mandatory field, when Flux tries to drop ownership, it will not be able to do so, and it will return an error. And then if once we have dropped ownership and somebody else co-owns it, and now they have full ownership, they are not able to drop it if it's a mandatory field.
They
Yeah.
could give it back to us, right? But no controller is going to do that. Or somebody could do that with an
Like
option.
So
manual
if they
operations.
so hear me out. If they mess with the manage fields, and instead of, so they could do this in order to avoid blocking their removal of the management. They could patch the manage fields and put it on Flux, give it to the customized controller.
Yeah,
Like in the
realistically, somebody could stop a controller, and remove the
Yeah,
reconciliation.
you can do a kubectl patch, but
Leave
what
some
what
stale
we've
managed
seen in
fields. An ops person reads our FAQ, gives it back to Flux, and then Flux would reassume management of it, and that
it
would
will not reassume management. That's what I'm trying to say. If you read the actual test that Dipti wrote, you'll understand what's happening here. The problem is if someone gives us back the management and we have the ignore rule in place, we are not going to apply with that field, and it will always fail. Flux will be blocked forever because we are not adding the field to the apply. Then this translates into a delete operation. Then the delete operation is blocked, of course, by the Open API validation. Hey, you are trying to remove a required field. So it's very straightforward here how Flux can get into this lock state where it can't move forward because the ignore field targets a required field, and we are the sole owner of that required field.
Yeah, it's kind of described in 4ly if you want to read through that. So like the second part, if the ignored field is a mandatory field, the Kubernetes API server throws an error since when Flux gives up ownership, this is interpreted as a delete and a mandatory field cannot be deleted.
Yes. And this is from all of this is something that we cannot fix because there is no workaround for this. It's not correct to ignore the ignore and okay, apply it because to just pass the error, that will not be correct. On the other hand, we know for sure this will completely block any apply from this moment on. Unless the old owner comes and takes again ownership, we are going to be stuck forever. So
Can't we
I mean,
tell when we read the object from the cluster beforehand that something has that we're the sole manager or not? It seems like the information of the state of the API is there before
Yeah,
we
metadata managed field should tell you that.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
it should be there, but that's what I think. It just goes on complicating our logic, right? Do we want to now also go and look into these managed fields and also try to see, is there a manager? Is it already managed? Should we then drop it? If it's managed, was it done via client-side apply? Was it done correctly? Do we want to get into all that math and complicate the logic, or keep our design that, if the user specified this in their drift ignore rules? So if they didn't want this behavior, they shouldn't have specified in drift ignore rules. So if they want to fix it, if something is not expected to be, if nobody is expected to take ownership of it, then please don't specify it in drift ignore rules. That can be, so the last part, like our design can just be, if it's specified in the ignore rules and there is drift, then Flux just drops ownership of it. And it's the user's responsibility to make sure that this is configured correctly, that when they have specified a field in the drift ignore rules, it will be owned by another SSA manager.
but let's take it from another perspective. So we have in Git an object that has a required field in there specified in Git with a value. And we start from 0 with the ignore rule of that field. CA bundle, perfect example, right? What happens the first thing? We create the object, ignore
All
rule
good.
is ignored, right? CRD gets created with that CA bundle, the dummy bundle. Let's say cell manager is down, dead, or you scaled it to 0. What happens the second time we apply it? There is no other manager, so we keep applying it, or we automatically fail.
So the first time we apply, if there is nothing else that has drifted, so the dry run will detect that actually, even though the field is drift ignored, nothing has drifted so far. So it's a no op as well. So that's 2, which is if no fields of the resource have drifted, has drifted returns false, and it returns unchanged action. But before cert manager applies or like takes ownership of the CRD bundle, if there was another field which was not drift ignored and that gets drifted, Then we get into 6, which is like the drift ignored field has actually not drifted, but some other field has actually got drifted, because of which we go ahead and also apply the drift ignore rules, which ends up removing ownership of the CRD bundle, which cert manager has not yet taken ownership of, and then we get into the error state. So if we want to, a possible improvement there could be that we try to see the drift that was introduced, is it in a field which was not drift ignored? Then we don't apply the drift ignore rules. We only so other than CRD bundle, suppose something like some label or some annotation, something like that had changed, then we don't apply the drift ignore rule. We only apply the drift ignore rule when a field that is drift ignored is drifted.
Oh,
But
cool. Yeah, I understand now what you're saying.
so 6 is there's a field which is ignored, but the other manager has not taken over yet.
Yes, right.
And another field has
Which is
drifted.
not ignored has drifted. Yeah.
So we need an apply, right?
Yeah, we need an apply to correct
This
that
app-
drift.
Yeah, to correct that drift, which is in a field that is not ignored. So what's gonna happen? Like, so your suggestion is to not apply the ignore in this
Yeah.
case, right?
And just correct the drift of the not ignored field, so that we get back into a state where
Right.
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
correct the drift.
that's a simple fix, right? We don't need to check managed fields.
Yeah, we
Yes.
don't need to check manage field. We just need to go inside, get the JSON pointer for like what is present and what is not there, and kind of do a semantic equal again there. And if a drift ignore rule is not drifted, then don't apply it. Yeah, do something like that. It's not very
Yeah.
complicated. Yeah.
LGTM. LGTM.
Yeah. So 5 and 6, I was thinking
Yeah.
maybe we can take. Yeah.
I think we should definitely do this because there is no guarantee that the controller that is supposed to take ownership of some required field will be there.
Mhm. Mhm.
Even if it's there and it's healthy, maybe it has the queue full with other work, right? And we don't want to crash everything in Flux just because, I don't know, control runtime or cert manager is already generating 4 certs, and this will be like the fifth one gets in the queue. It takes 10 seconds to get there while we are breaking everything, and with depends on everything that happens in Flux can have like a really, really bad, people can have a really bad experience because of this, right? Just to discover that at the next reconcile interval, everything will work because, okay, the manager, the other controller actually managed to do its part. So I think, yeah, I think we should definitely do this. It's
Yeah. And I have an important thing to add here, Deepti. I guess that's gonna be like a few more test cases. We just shipped in customized controller and backported so we can release it in Flux 2.8 as a patch, a feature gate that touches managed fields entries for migrating the API version. So we got this issue recently from like external secrets just released a new version 2.3 that introduced a new field that has a default. And this is causing setups out there that have managed field entries with V1 beta 1, and it's now V1, right? Because there's V1 beta 1 in the API version field of the managed field entries out there, this results in a dry run error saying, oh, this field does not exist. Because yes, it was only added in V1 and the API server is using the V1 beta 1 schema to validate, and the field is not there. So what the feature gate we shipped for this is to send a raw patch to the API server before dry run to update the API version field of the managed field entries to the desired API version.
Kind of like the patch that we had to do for our own Flux migrate as well.
Yes,
It's the same.
exactly the same function.
It's so
Nothing changed.
It's so hacky because it's not like a formal API conversion, and there's no way to convert an object and be like, hey, I have this desired state of like a minimum set of fields, and then you're considering all of the other ones that are applied or not applied, but then you convert the object and it's like it doesn't give you back the minimal set of fields. So it's completely useless for field ownership to do a full conversion. So the only thing that you can do is just change the version and hope that the fields are the same as before, which is like so
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
correct.
if they do a breaking change, we never do breaking changes in Flux API, and that's why this procedure works.
Yeah, field renames, it's like it's impossible
If
to
they rename, if they change the type of an object, now it's string, tomorrow is integer or whatever,
yeah.
done. The thing that we are rolling right now with the future flag will crash big time, right? So our solution right now to unblock, because we know we have so many Flux users using external secrets, and luckily external secrets didn't break their API. They just added a new default field in V1 from V1 beta 2. They didn't rename fields and so on. We just got lucky because of that. In 2.86, we are going to release this as a future gate, but in 2.9, we are going to add an opt-in a field in Flux customization for people to enable this on a customization basis and not for the whole thing, because it's so dangerous to do it blindly for all the APIs out there. And there is no guarantee those controllers follow what Flux is doing, right? I've seen so many controllers doing all sorts of crazy breaking changes between API versions. So it will be first we ship it as a future gate, and then in 2.9, along with your improvement DPT for drift detection, we are also going to add a field in the customization to enable the migration or not. I'm also thinking about we have these annotations in customized control, right, where we define how SSA should work. If we each should tolerate kubectl, do the merge, or ignore the whole object and so on. I think we should also ship an annotation, especially for this, because even if we add the field at the customization level, it's still very dangerous because there are people that are using a customization to apply tens of thousands of objects, all sorts of custom resources. And even if with this Boolean at the customization level, it's still very dangerous. So I think the best approach would be to add a new annotation that defines the behavior, where the annotation value will be migrate enable, I don't know, customize toolkit flux.hotel / migrate APIs, value enable. You add this in your Git repo when you know that you are upgrading whatever controller, and that controller, the new version of the API is backwards compatible, didn't do crazy changes around types and so on. And you annotate that object, and only for that object, we are going to perform the migration. So, Mateus, I think what we have now, it's good as for 2.8 to unblock some people, but we shouldn't advertise this gate. People shouldn't be enabling for everything. It's very dangerous. And in 2.9, we need to improve SSA to look at the annotation as well, and only do it for the objects that have the annotation.
I need to go
Like,
read if there's like a KEP for SSA or something and see if the versioning of the managed fields was ever something that they thought would need to be dealt with, because they get stale, right? Like that's the thing that we noticed with that
yeah,
is that like it doesn't ever upgrade as a result of applying even new resources with new types, right? Like you still end up with the old.
yeah,
But it's like if managed fields like stays like that, like this feels like it's a bug in API server, right?
for sure.
Like
Mhm.
Also, why, if you have mixed versions, why is the API version choosing the oldest version to do the validation? So if you have V1, V1 beta 2, V1 beta 1 in the
Well,
managed fields,
yeah,
it
the
shows
reason
V1 beta 1. Why
the
it
reason
chose to
it's you
validate?
don't have the desired state of all of the controllers like collaborating at one time. So you don't know like if like say I have three controllers, right? And they're all working on my resource at V1 and I want to go to V2. And an API server has the conversion from V1 to V2. But at any one time that you're doing an apply, you're not doing a group apply, right? You're not saying like I have the desired state from controller 1, controller 2, and 3. Right? I only ever have like the desired state from like one controller. So the that means that the server-side apply logic can only figure out like the intended fields from one controller at any one time. So it needs a hub conversion, right? Like whoever talks to it first sort of picks the lowest API version possible. And then like every time another controller checks in, it's like, hey, I am actually going to work on version 2 now, right? But the managed fields from the other two controllers are still on V1, and it's like there's no way to get the minimal set of fields that are desired for controller 1 or controller 3 state, right? Controller 2 is saying, hey, I'm willing to upgrade. I'm using the new field schema. But there's no way to, so you have to convert that field schema to the old thing. So it's really something that needs to be done like all at once, right? Like
Yeah, but
the
why choose the old API schema and not the newest one? It's
because
like,
when you come with your desired state for like the other controllers may not have talked to the API server in the past hour, right? Like they're just managing their fields, but the desired state of what they're managing is old. So when you put the desired state of the new thing in there, you almost have to track like, hey, I'm like we would need multiple versions of the managed fields to be stored all of the time. And then once all of the controllers check in, then API server would be like, hey, oh, I have new versions of the managed fields that are equivalent to each other.
no, it makes no sense, man. If me as the applier, I'm telling the API, I'm applying V1, this is my patch.
Yeah.
The API decides, oh, there was a controller like 3 months
Yeah.
ago that has applied V1 beta 1, so I'm going to
Yeah.
drop everything that you are doing, everything that you are telling me, and I'm going to decide, well, I'm going to apply the defaults from V1 because you send it V1, but I'm going to validate it with the lowest version of all. Like, what makes zero sense no matter how I try to explain it,
I
right?
think
So
we would either because right now what's happening is there's an implicit conversion to the lowest hub version for the managed field selection. But I think what really needs to happen on API server side is we at a minimum should be storing what the controller gave us. And then if the implicit conversion is happening, then we do that until the hub version can change. Then we start storing the managed fields as a different
what
representation.
I think why I think we are hitting this issue is that the ingestion pipeline in the API has no idea of the whole pipeline. There is first you hit the default conversion
Yeah.
hook, then you hit the defaults for the version that you are specifying.
Mhm.
Then you do mutations, and at the end you do validation. The piece of code that is doing the validation has no clue about anything else. It runs in isolation. There is their code that orders the APIs, picks the oldest one, and runs the validation there. It does not know about but the conversion hook ran for V1. Why would I want to validate with an older version, right? There is no orchestration in the pipeline. You just run all the things in the pipeline with their own logic, right?
Well, there
And
is
the
a
logic
conversion.
for the last
Yeah.
step is it is what it is. I don't think we can. I don't know. We should definitely have a discussion with the Kubernetes team
For
that
sure,
deals
this is
with SSA, but
API machinery would be the like where we need to talk about making SSA be able to auto upgrade, because it really, if you think about it, like you're right. Like, even though we only have partial state, like, if all of the controllers eventually start talking on a new API version, we should be able to store the state of the desired patch
oh,
in
and
management.
another thing, what Mateus observed in tests, even if all the appliers are on V1, it doesn't matter. As long as there is V1 beta 1 in there, it will always drop the validation. So if we don't do this kind of patching to strip all versions from there, the open API validation always gets downgraded.
Yes.
So you can't even get out of this situation, no
Yeah,
matter if you
It-
orchestrate
it
all the
gets pinned
controllers, you
and
move
stale.
everything to V1. It's
Yeah,
stale forever.
it's a massive problem.
Yeah.
And because you end up with like this minimum version selection, like pinning you to old APIs. It, like, if somebody ever uses an old API, one time and then fixes it, like it gets stuck.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You need to purge the
I,
fields. There is no workaround.
I wonder what's gonna happen in Helm now with server-side apply when
oh
they
fuck,
reach
Testing
this
stuff.
problem.
that's gonna be so bad.
It's gonna be a 5 years journey until they reach what
Well,
they're talking about right now.
well, we can fix this in Kubernetes though, right? And by we, I mean somebody more qualified than us to do it. But it's like
Adrian will do it because he is now getting the events fixed. Everybody will trust him. And then, Adrian, you are going to fix also the Kubernetes API server-side apply next.
I will be the
Oh my
Trojan
God.
horse here. The Trojan horse.
Yeah. I
Okay, we are almost at time.
I'm gonna
Let's
nerd snipe
also
Lucas and Stefan Szymanski on this. I think because they're working a lot on API machinery for conditional authorization right now. I bet you, I bet you we could get them to maybe at least get a conversation going on how to make SSA upgrade aware. So,
So,
for API.
well, I just brought this up because I wanted to ask Deepti to see what I did
rebase.
and yeah, rebase, see what I did and
Yes.
decide if it's worth testing the two things together.
No, we
And
definitely have to, Deepti, we definitely have to rebase because what Mateus did now it's another patch before dry run.
dry
Who
run.
knows how that will affect ignore? So first thing, rebase without changing anything. Let's see that all your tests are passing. Then implement the things that we discuss here with
5 and 6,
you know
right?
Yeah.
5 and 6 dealing with those. But yeah, the more things we are adding to our own pipeline, it's become even in SSE, it's already very complex. The thing that you mentioned, do you want to look at the managed fields and compare them? We do that a lot. How do you think we remove kubectl and other managers? Like we've built parsing into that, and other projects begged us like, please create these functions publicly because we also need to do this kind of thing in our stuff. Even if they don't use Flux SSA, they only need the logic around parsing managed fields, merging them, comparing them, and we made some functions public. So there is code there that does everything that you need. Because otherwise, how can we remove, managers which are not supposed to affect the drift? So all the code is there. Is not you will not have to write this on your own. Everything is there already. We need to decide: is it worth doing this kind of operation or
Yeah.
not? But addressing the things that we discussed today, I think it will move forward the pull request to a better place. And then we can meet again and discuss also, do we want to improve some things looking at the field managers? Is the code already there? Can we just call a function? Like, for example, we have a function that tells us is kubectl is any manager present? Is any manager present that overlaps with what we manage? So we already have these kind of functions that do drift detection, but on managed fields, not on the actual fields, right? So it may just be after we fix what we discussed today, maybe next meeting will just be, okay, we are going to call another function that we already have and improve our ignore code without
After what we
having to
discussed
write new
today,
stuff.
like after what we discussed today, I understand that we don't need to look into the managed fields at all, right? So let's try to do
To
that
solve the
first.
two,
Yeah, for
to
Yeah,
five
yeah,
solve
and
the two
six we
issues that we
don't.
discussed, yes.
Yeah, but there
yeah,
is
yeah.
4 as well. For 4, if we
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
address
yeah.
4, then we want to look at managed fields.
I think
Oh,
I think we
Yeah,
Let's
4.
right. I'll
let's
take a look
discuss
at that
that.
one.
yeah.
Let's
Next
discuss
time.
that after next time. After you fix 5 and
5
6,
and 6.
see where we are with the code, how complex it is. Then decide. Then do another review for the things that are in under discussion, right? But I think especially if we don't fix 5, we can't move forward with this. Is like spamming with things that change where they aren't, and or the required field where Flux gets stuck immediately. We really need to fix those.
Yeah.
Okay, let's stop with this discussion here. So we also have like 5 minutes for Adrian and
Yeah.
talk a little bit about the event stuff in upstream.
Adrian, go.
Yeah.
You have the floor.
So, well, basically, I don't have much to update. I mean, I've been trying to push a little bit the review. One person got that reviewed and check a little bit the history why they haven't added this annotation event method. I don't know, because they were claiming that it was the previous event system was a bit heavy, but I don't think it's a big deal, like to add annotations. And this person mentioned that there was not big issue on adding it. Asked for another review, but I got stuck there. So I just wanted to see if you know how to get Kubernetes reviewers' attention somehow.
Slack?
Slack. Yeah.
Slack,
Have you
yeah,
connected on
but
Slack or on the Zoom call for that particular SIG?
okay.
Um,
Think
Do
it's
we have
one.
the SIG assigned? Oh yeah, so its API machinery was assigned. Okay, so at least we know who needs to do the triage for it.
Yeah, we'll
yeah,
try
you
to
can
bring it
just
up. Hmm.
asking a question in the API machinery Slack channel, and then
Hmm.
also looking up when they have I think there's 2 different API machinery meetings that have a cadence. And
Hmm.
one of them is API review, and then the other is the general meeting. And you definitely want to land something on the agenda beforehand.
Okay.
That one's pretty formal.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Okay.
just make yourself known in Slack and look for the meeting docs and when they have their meetings, because that's how you get stuff prioritized with that group of people.
Okay.
But
Okay, cool.
Adrian, what my suggestion is present this as a um, alignment of the new API with the old API with the new API that does
Yeah.
not add any complexity. By
No,
default,
not at all.
every single object in Kubernetes supports metadata annotations. The fact
Yeah.
that now you can't issue events annotated is a misalignment with Kubernetes itself. I mean, if you can
Yeah.
annotate anything, and it definitely works because we annotate everything from Flux and it works with the latest version of Kubernetes. So there is no
Yeah.
limitation whatsoever. This is just someone needs to port that function, but all the functionality is there. Events can be annotated. You can read the annotations. You can do everything because there are
Yeah.
like annotations which are common to all the objects. So I don't think it's a hard sell in any way.
Hmm.
It's just that someone has to, motivate why are we re-adding this back after so long, and I mean, you have to take like a blameless approach. There's no one to blame.
No,
We
no,
don't
no,
have
absolutely.
annotations. We need now annotations. The footprint of the change is tiny. There is nothing special about it. And Flux and probably many other projects rely on being able to enrich events with special metadata, and the right place to put it is, of course, in the annotations, because that's the role of an annotation overall for every single Kubernetes object, right? So,
And especially for events in this use case.
yeah. But it's we are not changing the API in any way. This is just a change in the client Go interface. And also the
I
code
think
change, I actually looked at it. It's like really tiny. There is no.
I think it's also relevant to ask if they're gonna remove the old API at all, and if yes, when.
I haven't heard anything, or at least the documents doesn't specify that. They just moved to B1, but the B1 beta 1 still works. I mean, the docs doesn't say anything about deprecation. It's just that they wanted to change a little bit how the events were issued, and that was all. Also, I have another point, which is, I mean, you change the API to B1 to add these new field collections, which is required. But in your fake Go, you are not adding that as part of the check-in. So it's like you have a required field, but you're not checking that to the output that you may get when you test. So that was kind of another another kind of argument to have it in there.
Exactly. Yeah, so you can't actually, the fake client is not confirmant with the actual API.
No, it's a string really, what it returns. I will try to bring it up. Meanwhile, because I don't have much hope, I wanted to use the old recorder, but the new API, just to see if that works. Not sure.
Yeah, let's try that. I mean, the plan is we should definitely do our best to get this merge into upstream. We still have a huge window because the release of 136 is next week. So then after the release, the embargo on merging, the freeze will be lifted. And we have at least 2 months after that to convince, to find two people in API machinery that this is worth looking at and merging, right? But if this drags on, we should work now and figuring out, can we use the old client with the new type in Flux? And I think we can, because I added a new field from the new API to our current events, and that works. Right?
Okay.
So my assumption is, because, and I did that a long time ago, like I know 3 years ago. So my assumption is that we can actually use the old interface, the client Go interface, with the new type, right? And if that works, then we are unblocked. We can move forward with it in Flux 2.9, add the OpenTelemetry enhancement, and then whenever Kubernetes merges it, we can do the flip at the end. So let's see if we are really blocked. And I think you can do this kind of testing very, very soon, because it's not blocking in any way. We just BioGi, we just, I mean, we already have test env with the real Kubernetes API in package. So you know for sure if the test passes, it works. There is no way it can't. It would work with mtest and not work on a real cluster, because it's an actual Kubernetes API running in there, any etcd.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I'm going to create new pull request using the recorder if it works. And I can remain the other ones on draft. And once we hopefully we have the upstream thing merge, I can take them over.
Then we rebase.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I think we are over time and I'm very tired of meetings. We can talk about Helm things next time, Mateus. Okay? Cool.
Cool.
Cool. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and I'll see you next week.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Take care.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.